Welcome back to another episode of the Green Cards to Greenbucks podcast. This is Nestor Vargas, your host and your Latino money man. I am so excited you're here today. You know what? As immigrants, we all have or will have an undocumented family member here in the U.S. who really just wants to work hard and find financial independence. But we know how hard it is for these hardworking individuals to even open up a checking account. So the thought of even investing or even opening a business doesn't really exist. And that's why I am bringing Maribel, who has been doing so much work for our Latino community, especially for those who are not documented. So Maribel is going to talk to us about her own journey as having parents who weren't documented, kind of how that journey went. We're going to talk about how people can invest in the stock market with an ITIN and what an ITIN is, and also how undocumented immigrants can start a business. And really, we're going to talk a lot more. So, Maribel, welcome to the Green Cards to Greenbacks podcast.
Thank you, Nestor, for having me. Super excited to talk about this and talk a little bit more about how even if somebody's fully undocumented in the United States, there is still a lot that they can do.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm so freaking excited because personally, I was lucky enough to come to this country legally. I came by plane. I didn't have to go through those hoops. I've had family members, I've had cousins who, came here on a visa, like a student visa or a tourist visa and stayed. And, that journey for them was really, really difficult. So I'm super excited. And even if there's listeners here listening that are completely documented, this is going to help you because you're going to ultimately find a friend, a family member that is going to need your help and you're going to be there for them. So Maribel, let's go ahead and get started. Do me a favor. Can you just kind of give us a quick recap of, what led you to what you're doing today?
So hi, everybody. My name is Maribel and I am the creator and founder of Our Wealth Matters, which is a social platform where I put a lot of content out there, predominantly hang out on Instagram, about personal finance specifically for the immigrant community in the United States. So this goes from fully undocumented to anybody who's documented and the first generation born here in the United States, because that's the bucket that I fall under. And basically what led me to do this was because my parents came here undocumented and I was lucky enough to be born here and then grew up with those privileges, at least of having a social security number and not really having to think further beyond that. But then I started learning about personal finance and, I was like, I'm going to put this content out in English and Spanish. I don't see a lot of Spanish content out there. But then I was like, wait, what if I'm like, hey, we can all become millionaires, right? Because once you start learning about personal finance, the FIRE movement, you're like, hold up, we can be millionaires and like retire. Hold up. If anything, it's like a requirement to be able to, live kind of well at retirement. And so I was like, what if I put this information out there and my family who's still undocumented, porque todavía tengo familiar that's here, that's still undocumented, what if they see my content, come to me and like, oh my gosh, we can be millionaires too? And then I was like, me sentiría tan gacho. Like I would feel so bad going like, oh no, this information is only for those of us that were born here or have a social security number. It's not for you. But so then I went through like a specific information rabbit hole where I learned about immigrant status and more about like people with ITINs, because I have a background in being an income tax preparer. So I work with the immigrant community a lot, processing ITINs and all of that. And I was like, so what can we do with an ITIN? And looking for these companies that were like brokerages where you can invest that accept ITINs, banks that accept ITINs. So I came to the realization that a lot of the things that one can do, even as a full citizen, someone can also do with an ITIN. And we'll discuss that more. Pero la cosa es que the other part was also that it also has to kind of do a little bit with my own money trauma, where when my dad got deported, my mom and I ended up living in the streets. And because we didn't have enough money or an emergency fund, right, to sustain the fact that the rent had gone up. And so my mom and I were just, sleeping in a car for some time. She would say like, I would pray that you wouldn't ask for food because I had nothing to feed you. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I cannot imagine that. So she had me when she was 20. So at that time she was like maybe 22, 23 with like a 2-3-year-old behind her, right? Trying to figure out how to get me taken care of so she could go back to work. Because at that time, my dad had told her like, you should stop working, take care of Maribel, which she did. Still worked a little bit behind his back. Pero it was not enough to, be able to pay the rent once he left her. He was the breadwinner and she didn't have enough money to sustain that. So to that kind of leads to the trauma now where I'm like, I need to have enough money to like not end up back on the streets. I'm like, and I'm going to help other immigrants also have enough money so they are like, know the money moves so they can build up their money. So they don't have to go through like those hard situations either if we can avoid it.
Yeah. Maribel, that's an amazing story. And I'm so proud of what you're doing. And, as a father and a first-gen immigrant kid as well, I can relate to a lot of the struggles that our parents have to go through to get us to where we are. And I am so grateful for everything that you're doing for our community, because absolutely our community has to be able to get involved with the wealth creation machine, which is the stock market, right? And business growth. And if we have the ability to give them access, then they're going to get so much closer to the financial independence numbers that they need. So with that said, tell us what an ITIN is. Like, where does this come from? What is this thing?
Yes. So in English, known as an ITIN. In Spanish, you may have heard them called ITINs. So basically, it stands for an individual taxpayer identification number. And it's a number that's issued by the IRS when you go do your taxes. So either you earn some income and you go do your taxes, or you're a spouse of somebody or a dependent of somebody. That's how you can get an ITIN. And this was something that the IRS created back in the 90s to allow people who didn't qualify for a social security number to pay their taxes. So for the purposes of our conversations, let's just say undocumented immigrants, they fall in that bucket. They can't get a social security number, so they can get this ITIN. Then that ITIN, though, serves as the base for all the financial moves that you can make in the United States, including opening up a checking account, savings account, buying a house, buying a car, setting up your own business, and legally earning money in the United States, investing in the stock market, and also just getting loans for like your business or your house. So basically, financially, all of the things that someone with a social security number can do, somebody with an ITIN can do here as well.
Okay. Why is it important for an undocumented immigrant to pay taxes?
It's important because, there's a couple different views, right? One is you never know if you're going to try to go through a naturalization process in the future. And then usually they ask you for proof that you were actually in the country in the years that you say you were in the country. And the income taxes that you submit to the IRS are some of those documents that you can present and use as backup, because it shows that you were here. You were trying to be a responsible resident of your area and being like, hey, I'm going to pay my taxes. The other view that's more personal is like, a lot of our families and a lot of us, if you are the immigrant, came to the United States because you wanted the level of lifestyle that they had here, right? You want the standard of living. But we pay for those roads and those public schools and all of the social welfare benefit systems through our taxes, whether we benefit from it or not. But like the roads and the public schools, like I'm a child who went through a public school all the way, right? And so I'm grateful. So now that I pay taxes, I'm like, you know what? It only makes it possible for my siblings to also go through public school, for me to get to the road from here to my job so that I can make that living and help my family out.
Yeah, I love how you said that. I'll give you an example that I think will resonate with our listeners. I was talking to my dad. This was really 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he was reminding me of when we were still living in Colombia. We had like our green card for the United States, but we were still living in Colombia more than we should have. And when we came one time to visit, since we would do that every once or twice a year, at immigration, this lady laid into him and said, where are you a resident of? Colombia or the United States? And she really what she was going to is making my dad say that he was a resident of Colombia to take that green card away from us. And one thing that helped us out is my dad had the tax returns that he had filed for the prior years with us, and we were able to come into the country. They basically stopped us at immigration and put us in this room. I don't remember any of this because I was too young, but absolutely just a good example of how things can really go down by just taking action, doing the right thing. And who knows what's going to happen with immigration law. Like you said, like what if there's an opportunity for that person to become a legal citizen? Well, you got to make sure you pay your taxes. And also you don't want to have all this back taxes due that are just going to, basically blow up your journey to financial independence. What's the process? How do you apply for an ITIN?
Yeah, so it all starts off with reporting your income taxes, right? So if you don't have an ITIN, there's 3 ways. The easiest is you can go to your tax preparer because it's to their advantage to get you an ITIN, so you can do your tax returns and that's where they get their money, right? So you can take your passport. There's other identifying documents that you can also take, but then it's not just going to be like the one thing that you have to send off. You have to send like 2 or more documents. But if you have a passport, it's the easiest one. You could just send it off. But if you're like, I don't want to give anybody my documents. What if it gets lost? Whatever. The IRS also has these things called certified acceptance agents. And these are people who have been trained by the IRS, and they have a directory on their website, and you can go look one up and you go in person. The third option is you can go directly to an IRS office. Again, they have this directory on their website, and you go in person, fill out your form called W-7. And again, W-7 is the form that you're going to fill out in whichever three of these options you decide to use. And then you take your identifying document. In the W-7, they're going to ask you, when did you come in? If you filled that same type of question in other paperwork to the government, make sure it's the same date. If you have never filled out any other paperwork, then make sure that whatever date you put on there, you remember that forever. Like if you're going to then apply to DACA and they ask you the same question, if you're going to go through immigration process and they ask you the same question, everything should match. That being said, I want to very strongly emphasize that although the IRS is part of the government, they do not make a habit of sharing information with ICE. So a lot of immigrants tend to not want to get an ITIN because they're like, now the IRS is going to know that I'm here. They're going to know my address. Then they're going to tell it to ICE. Then I have an immigration person knocking on my door. That is not the case. There is actually a specific section in the IRS code that says that they don't make a habit of communicating information to other parts of the government unless under extenuating circumstances, which means like that person must already be doing something, got on somebody's radar, and they're just coming to the IRS for like extra backup and extra help.
I love that. Thank you for those tips. Those are amazing tips to kind of know the different options. And then also to really be able to encourage our people to take that step and really make sure that you're doing everything you can to help yourself out. All right. So now this person's got an ITIN and now we're ready to invest because I've been listening to Maribel. Maribel has been teaching me. I've been listening to other people and now I'm ready to start investing. What's the process, Maribel?
So from there, you have to then figure out, first do your research. What do you want to invest in, right? Like, do you want to do single stocks? That takes a lot of research and time and maintenance. Or do you want to go down index funds? Takes it's much simpler. You don't have to spend as much time maintaining. That's personally where I went because I have no time to be like stock picking. And I don't want to go on the roller coaster of emotions when companies are going up and down. But everybody has their own risk tolerance, right? How risky do you want to be? So first of all, then you figure out, okay, and I'm going to go with stock market investing in this example. So say like, you know what, I want an S&P 500 index fund. Okay, great. Now you have to choose the brokerages. So haz de cuenta that brokerages are like markets, right? We got Albertsons, we got Ralph's, we got Food for Less, just to mention like Target and Walmart. We'll stick them in there because they got food and they're national here, right? So I know not everybody has the other food markets that I mentioned. So it's like this, right? You're going to get a lot of the same food and pretend like in one of the products, like an Apple, all of them sell apples, right? So, and that's what you want to buy. Now you just have to figure out what store, so like what brokerage company you want to buy it from. And again, they're all going to sell you the same thing, but some of them are a little more expensive, some are less. And that's where you pay attention to like the fees. What are they going to charge you? There's some that charge you for having your money invested with them. There are some that don't charge you anything. So one of the ones that I really like is, and not endorsing, of course, like do your research, but Fidelity has these zero cost index funds. And so they don't charge you for having your money invested there. They're going to charge you once you sell the stock. So you have to find which company is willing to do business with you because not all of them accept ITINs. Only some of them accept ITINs. Most of them, like all of them will more than likely accept social security numbers. Like that's their bread and butter, right? Because that's what the majority of people have. Then there's only some of them that will accept ITINs. So doing the research of who, and I've done the research. I have all of that, right? So three of those, for example, are Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, and Charles Schwab. And these are companies that have been in the stock brokerage game for a long time. They're well known in the industry. So that's why I mentioned these ones, right? There might be smaller ones out there, but again, do your research. So let's say we go with Fidelity. Okay. And then now I know what product I want. And you go and you set up an account. And on their website, it says that you might have to fill out a paper account. That's not true. I actually had a client who went through the process and you can actually apply online, just like somebody with social security number. It just says wherever the box says, put in your social security number here, you put your ITIN there. And I haven't tested the other platforms out because I can't do it because I have a social security number. I need like somebody else to tell me if you guys have, drop by Our Wealth Matters on IG and let me know because I would love to know if they have a similar process.
Yes, I love that. So a few things that I'll say. I'm a Fidelity baby. I worked at Fidelity Investments for 8 years and I love the company for self-directed investors. I don't know that there's any better company when it comes to the accessibility of products, the cost. and the website. Again, I'm not endorsing them either, but having worked there for a long time, I believe in what they offer. The process is super simple. Like you said, you go online within a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, you've got an account open. And I would take it a step farther, especially for individuals who are really just starting out. There's also services that Fidelity offers that are really extremely low cost, which are called robo-advisors. It's basically is a computer model that will manage the funds for you, and they'll use low-cost index funds for you, really low-cost investments. So it also encourages people to not feel overwhelmed by investing. It's made very simple, very accessible. And I tend to share the same feeling with individual stock markets. That's individual stocks like you do. Maribel, as of the recording of this podcast, I manage over $8 million worth of investments. And I don't manage individual stocks. There's some clients that have individual stocks. They brought that in. I don't think there's a need for it. And frankly, history shows that many people are very bad at really getting any extra added value or any extra added performance by investing in individual stocks. So thanks for sharing all those tips. Those are awesome. So that seems like it's really easy. Once you have this ITIN number, just to go on Fidelity or Charles Schwab or TD, get it open, get started. So there shouldn't be any excuse because frankly, you can even start with as little as $50. Like there's really no high minimums with a lot of these companies. So we now have, what we've done is empowered these individuals to actually now access a wealth building mechanism that the wealthy here in the United States use, which is really efficient. Now let's talk about the other way to create wealth, which is becoming a business owner. And I think that's really important because right now, Latinos, especially Latinas, are one of the fastest growing business owners in our country. And so I have to think that there's a lot of people that are Latino or Latinas who want to start a business. Maybe they don't have the proper documents and now are stuck doing odd jobs. How does someone who has an ITIN or not documented start a business?
This is one of the most, it surprises a lot of people. That's when I say undocumented immigrants can legally earn money in the United States. And a lot of people are like, hold up. I thought we couldn't because you can't apply to jobs with a night. Yeah, that's true. You can't. But never underestimate how capitalistic the United States is. So within ITIN, you can actually set up a company. So your LLC, so proprietorship, you register it with your state. So for example, I live in the state of California. I would register that with California. And right now, LLCs, I think they're waiving the $800 you used to have to pay. So let's say if you registered it at the end of the year, then at the beginning of next year, you would have to pay another one. Now, depending on how close you are, they're waiving that first year. And they also used to have a $70 fee that they're also waiving for a period of time. So you can start there. So you do that and you register it, right? And you do your DBA or so doing BAS or your fictitious business name. You set it all up and then they're like, great, you got it. You post it on the newspaper. Then from there, you go to the IRS website and this is for free. You just have to go they have office hours, even though it's like a virtual system. So you go to the IRS website and you have your paperwork from the state of California in this case, and they ask you to add some of that information. And then a lot of it is a little repetitive as well as what's the name, what's the address, what's the phone number who can we contact? And then, if you registered it with the state, what's the identifying number there? And then they'll give you something called an EIN, Employer Identification Number. Now that you have the EIN, you can apply to specific jobs as a contractor. So you're not applying as yourself, some undocumented immigrant with an ITIN, you're applying as a company with an EIN. And some people get confused with the difference, so I'm going to make it very clear here. ITIN is an identifying number for you as the individual. EIN is the identifying number for your company as a company, as the individual company. So that's why they're different. They're not the same. So you can apply to jobs with the EIN. So I know when I say contractor, a lot of people are thinking oh, somebody's going to do construction or do some of this. That is some of the stuff that you can do. But the whole point is that you can apply for project-based, time-based projects at a company. So let's say you can also be a freelance photographer, content creator. You can set up your own business in a floreria. You may be doing odd jobs around. You can just be a handyman and then you get paid to, your company and it all goes to your bank account, to the bank account of the company. And then from there, your company will pay. This is where we kind of get into that gray area of the law where no company is supposed to hire anybody with an ITIN, but this is your own company and you're the only employee and you're the one doing the work. So if anybody did come and take a magnifying glass to your company, that's where your company might get in trouble. But again, we've already seen that the IRS really just cares about getting their piece of the pie. We saw that with the creation in the 1990s when they created ITINs so they could get tax money from undocumented immigrants. So, as long as you're doing your taxes, you're doing everything above board, should be fine.
I love that. And I think it's really clear that we land this myth of creating a corporation or an LLC, how difficult it is. I want to make sure it lands. It is so, so simple. I just got done doing it for my mom's future husband. He just bought a big rig, like a tractor trailer, and I set up the LLC down in Florida. It cost like $120. It took me 15 minutes to go to sunbiz.org, started an organization, chose an LLC because it's the only person. But, maybe you talk to a tax preparer or an accountant like Maribel and say, hey, like, what structure do I need to use? And then you just go to the IRS website, which I did this morning because we had to change his name. So we had to get a new EIN number for him. And it took me literally 5 minutes to file it. And boom, he's in business, ready to go, which I love the fact that it allows you, though, as an individual to apply for project-based work that doesn't have to be construction, that doesn't have to be cleaning. Most of the jobs where we typically land in when we don't have documents, you could be someone who's creative, who can use a computer and is a graphic designer and find work that way. So I love the ability for individuals to have that option. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I just set up a company. I don't do a lot of work with my family's income tax preparation, but one of the services that I do offer is helping people set up their companies. And it was awesome. Like, I helped one client, like within 2 weeks, we had already started from like zero, like he literally had nothing, to all the way to being registered in California, paying all the dues that he had to pay and getting the EIN from the IRS. Like, it doesn't really take that long. And when I did the math, because California is waiving all that stuff, it's basically like you can set up an LLC with $50, literally. So there are online websites that you can go to, right? And they help you set everything up all the way to your bank account. I don't help do that because I'm like, I don't know, you find a bank account that's close to you, right? That works for you. But I do want to let people know that. And you don't have to set up a corporation or an LLC, right? You can literally just set up a sole proprietorship, like literally just you. If you're like, I don't know about all that, I don't even make money like that. You don't have to get super complex. You can start off with sole proprietorship. And in the future, if your business grows bigger, you can always update it to something else.
I love that, Maribel. I think that there's absolutely a lot of merit in using someone to help you get that set up if you feel anxious. That way you just get it out of the way and get going. Absolutely. And also make sure that you get bookkeeper to start running the books. Like, that's the other thing that I see.
That takes so long.
People don't do, which is crazy because no one wants to, look at receipts. No one wants to look at their statement to make sure that what was charged on your credit card is accurate. And at the end of the day, you got to pay your taxes, and it's going to make things a lot easier if you have a bookkeeper. So
and your tax preparer is not your bookkeeper unless they specifically offered you the service of bookkeeper. So like, I think usually if you want like all in one, I think that's more like CPA, right? Like they'll do the bookkeeping and they'll keep you updated and are licensed to do taxes at the end if that's what you want, all in one. But yeah, just know that there are other things. Like bookkeeper is different from your payroll person. That's different from your tax preparer.
That's right. There's definitely a few things to learn, but nothing that can't be learned very easily. And the ability to use technology these days to run payroll and all that stuff is just phenomenal. I mean, you can be up and running payroll within 15 to 20 minutes. You can have bookkeeper. I mean, I pay like $150 for my bookkeeper on a monthly basis. I'm sure there's people that are a lot less than that. It really depends on how many transactions you have, how many accounts you have. So if you're just starting out, I'm sure you can find a bookkeeper that's a little more affordable, but definitely get started on investing, get started on creating wealth. There's no excuse now not to do so. So Maribel, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up this amazing episode?
Yeah, so if you want to know any more information about me or my work, you can follow me on all social media platforms. It's Our Wealth Matters. I mostly hang out on Instagram, and that's where there's also a link in my bio where I have a freebie, completely free to anybody who clicks on it. It's in both English and Spanish, and it's like 10 plus pages of personal finance information tailored specifically for the immigrant community in the States and how you can get started on your personal finance wealth journey.
Oh man, I freaking love it. Thank you so much for creating all that content. I know it's going to impact a lot of people. Maribel, I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Nestor.
Bueno pues, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I want to go ahead and ask you to please send me any questions you may have or any topics you want me to talk about. Go ahead and send them to Nestor, Nestor, at greencardstogreenbacks.com. I actually read every email you send, so I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to head over to greencardstogreenbacks.com for the show notes for this episode, and really links to any resources we may have discussed. Bueno, amigos y amigas, nos vemos pronto. Let's go make those greenbacks.